The bulldozer ripped through Marcus Webb's wheelchair ramp before the sun had even fully risen that morning. He heard the grinding metal from inside his kitchen and dropped his coffee mug instantly. Marcus wheeled himself to the front door, his hands trembling against the cold metal rims. Outside, the driveway lay cracked, crumbled. To navigate now. Diane Whitfield stood near the destruction wearing pearls, sunglasses, and an expression of total satisfaction. "You never got proper approval for that ramp," she announced, crossing her arms triumphantly. Marcus felt his chest tighten, remembering the disability accommodation forms he had submitted months ago. "I have documentation," he said, his voice shaking with disbelief and barely controlled rage. Diane waved a dismissive hand, clearly uninterested in anything resembling facts or fairness. Behind her, the driveway, hooking chains beneath his wife's minivan. "Wait!" Elena screamed, running outside with their crying 8-year-old. "Unauthorized vehicle parked on community property," Diane recited flatly, like she'd memorized the cruel script. Their son Tyler sobbed, watching strangers drag away the only vehicle his family owned. Marcus tried wheeling forward, but the broken concrete blocked every inch of his pathway. "This is my house," he shouted, frustration boiling over after years of patient politeness. Diane simply smiled, the kind of smile reserved for people who never faced consequences. Neighbors peeked through curtains, afraid to intervene against the woman who controlled their fines. One man stepped outside anyway. Phone raised. Waiting moment. "She's been doing this for years," Robert muttered, disgust evident across his weathered face. Marcus remembered moving here proud, hopeful, peaceful after 3 deployments overseas. He had lost the use of his legs saving fellow soldiers during a roadside explosion. This neighborhood was supposed to be his sanctuary, not another battlefield demanding constant defensive vigilance. Diane had targeted him from day one, questioning his disability placard during the closing inspection. "Some people exaggerate conditions to avoid maintaining proper landscaping standards," she'd whispered to another board member. Marcus had brushed it off then, assuming reasonable people couldn't truly be that openly cruel. Now watching his ramp destroyed, his van towed, reality crashed violently against his naive optimism. Elena knelt beside him, tears streaking down her face, voice cracking with helpless anger. "They can't just do this," she whispered, though clearly they absolutely just had. Diane turned toward her car, calling over her shoulder without a hint of remorse. "File a complaint if you want, dear." Marcus watched the tow truck disappear around the corner, carrying away his family's independence. Tyler clung to his mother's leg, asking why the mean lady hated their family so much. Marcus had no answer that wouldn't terrify or confuse his frightened young son. Robert approached cautiously, lowering his phone, his expression somewhere between sympathy and simmering fury. "I've got this all recorded," he said quietly. "Every word." Marcus nodded gratefully, though gratitude felt hollow against the wreckage surrounding his broken driveway. "This isn't over," Marcus said, surprising himself with the steel suddenly hardening his voice. Diane's car pulled away, leaving dust and devastation scattered across what was once his home. Elena helped him back inside, navigating around chunks of broken concrete with painful difficulty. Inside, the paperwork, organized neatly in a folder labeled Proof. He had saved every document, every email, moved in. Something inside him shifted then, transforming quiet patience into determined, unstoppable resolve for justice. She picked the wrong family to mess with, he told Elena, gripping the folder tightly. Tyler watched his father's face change from devastation into something fierce and unfamiliar entirely. Daddy's going to fix this, Marcus promised, though he wasn't entirely certain how yet. Robert lingered by the doorway, offering whatever help his family might desperately need now. There's a lawyer downtown who specializes in HOA abuse cases, Robert mentioned carefully. Marcus felt something close to hope flicker weakly inside his exhausted, frustrated chest. Give me her number, he said, already reaching for his phone with renewed purpose. Outside, wreckage of concrete, dust everywhere. But inside Marcus Webb, something far more dangerous than rubble had just been ignited. Attorney Patricia Nguyen reviewed Marcus's documentation with sharp, focused eyes across her cluttered desk. This isn't just harassment, she said. This is a clear pattern of discrimination. Marcus slid forward photographs showing every interaction, every fine, since moving in. She's done this before, Patricia confirmed, pulling files from other former residents who'd fled the neighborhood. A retired schoolteacher, a young immigrant family, and a wheelchair-bound widow had all suffered similarly. Diane Whitfield uses the HOA like her personal kingdom, Patricia explained, anger creeping into her tone. Marcus learned Diane had quietly amended bylaws specifically targeting accessibility modifications without proper board approval. She's been illegally altering covenants for 15 years, Patricia said, sliding another document across the table. Marcus felt validation mixing painfully with fury, realizing how many families she'd already destroyed. We're filing a lawsuit, Patricia announced firmly. Disability discrimination, property destruction, and breach of fiduciary duty. Elena squeezed his hand beneath the table, silently communicating strength they both desperately needed now. That evening, victim Patricia had identified throughout her extensive research. One by one, finally finding courage through Marcus's unexpected willingness to fight. Robert organized a neighborhood meeting, inviting residents tired of Diane's tyrannical reign over their community. 20 people showed up, sharing stories of unfair fines, selective enforcement, and outright bullying tactics. She fined me for grass 2 inches too long while ignoring identical violations from her friends, one woman said. Marcus realized this fight extended far beyond his own ramp, his own van. Diane had built an empire of fear, controlling an entire community through intimidation and selective cruelty. Meanwhile, dismissing rumors of organized resistance as pathetic, powerless complaining. They'll back down eventually, she told her assistant, sipping wine on her perfectly manicured porch. She had survived every previous challenge, crushing dissent through expensive legal threats and relentless fines. But Marcus wasn't backing down. fueled by military discipline and years of suppressed righteous anger. He spent nights compiling spreadsheets, timelines, soldier-like precision. Patricia filed formal complaints with the state's Fair Housing Authority, citing blatant disability discrimination violations. Investigators began reviewing Diane's record, uncovering financial irregularities within the HOA's mismanaged community funds. She's been pocketing maintenance fees, Patricia revealed during their third meeting. Sliding bank statements across the table. Marcus felt something shift. Realizing Diane's cruelty was matched only by her financial corruption and greed. Tyler asked Knightley whether the mean lady would finally stop hurting their family permanently. "We're making sure she never hurts anyone again," Marcus promised. Hoping desperately he could deliver. Elena researched temporary ramps. Determined their son shouldn't watch his father struggle navigating broken concrete daily. Neighbors quietly contributed materials, helping rebuild access without official HOA approval or interference whatsoever. Diane noticed the community rallying, her confidence cracking slightly beneath mounting undeniable pressure. She attempted intimidation, threatening Robert with defamation lawsuits over his recorded video evidence. Robert refused to back down, forwarding everything directly to Patricia's growing case file. "She's getting desperate," Patricia noted, smiling slightly as evidence continued accumulating against Diane's crumbling defense. The lawsuit gained local media attention. Journalists fascinated by a decorated veteran fighting institutional, unchecked tyranny. A news crew arrived, filming Marcus's broken driveway alongside emotional testimony from his frightened young son. Diane refused interview requests, retreating further into denial as public opinion turned sharply against her. The HOA board distanced themselves from Diane's increasingly reckless and indefensible behavior. "We never authorized destroying his ramp," one board member admitted anonymously to local reporters. Diane realized her allies were abandoning her, leaving only desperate, crumbling excuses behind. Marcus felt momentum building, evidence mounting, and justice finally creeping closer within tangible, hopeful reach. Patricia scheduled mediation. Though privately doubting Diane would accept any reasonable settlement whatsoever. "She'll fight until the courtroom," Patricia warned Marcus, preparing him for a lengthy, exhausting legal battle. Marcus nodded, remembering every battle he'd already survived throughout his life. "I didn't survive an explosion to lose against a woman with pearls," he said quietly. Elena laughed despite everything, grateful watching her husband's resilience reignite after weeks of devastating struggle. The mediation date arrived. Diane walking in wearing confidence she clearly no longer deserved. Marcus wheeled forward, documents in hand, ready to finally confront the woman who'd shattered his peace. Inside the mediation room, Diane Whitfield sat rigid, refusing eye contact with Marcus or Patricia. "My client destroyed protected accessibility infrastructure and unlawfully towed a vehicle during a medical emergency," Patricia stated clearly. Diane's lawyer attempted weak defenses, citing unverified violations that crumbled instantly under documented evidence. Marcus presented his approved disability paperwork, proving Diane had ignored legitimate accommodation requests deliberately. "She knew," Marcus said firmly. "She knew and destroyed it anyway." Out of spite. The mediator reviewed everything silently, his expression growing increasingly unsympathetic toward Diane's crumbling position. Diane attempted one final excuse. Claiming ignorance about federal disability protections within community associations. Ignorance isn't a defense for 15 years of documented targeted discrimination, Patricia countered sharply. Mediation collapsed within an hour. Diane refusing any settlement that acknowledged genuine wrongdoing whatsoever. See you in court, Patricia said, gathering her files with quiet, confident satisfaction. 3 months later. The courtroom filled with former victims, supportive neighbors, and dedicated journalists. Marcus testified first, describing the explosion overseas, his recovery. He described watching his ramp destroyed, his family's van towed, his son's terrified confused tears. The jury watched Robert's video footage, witnessing Diane's smug cruelty without any remorse whatsoever. Former victims testified next, painting a damning pattern of discrimination, intimidation. Diane's own financial records revealed embezzled maintenance fees totaling nearly $80,000. Her lawyer's defense weakened further. Unable to counter overwhelming documentation and consistent victim testimony, Marcus's closing statement silenced the courtroom. His voice steady despite years of accumulated pain. I fought for this country expecting fairness, he said. I deserve fairness here too. The jury deliberated only 4 hours before returning with their unanimous, decisive verdict. We find in favor of the plaintiff, the foreman announced, awarding $200,000. Marcus felt Elena's hand grip his shoulder, tears streaming freely down both their faces. Tyler finally smiled. Understanding justice had triumphed over cruel injustice. Diane sat motionless, her face pale, realizing her empire had finally, completely collapsed entirely. The judge additionally barred her permanently from holding any HOA leadership position statewide. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Marcus, asking how it felt finally winning against tyranny. It feels like justice, he said simply. It feels like finally being heard. Diane disappeared into a waiting car, avoiding cameras, avoiding neighbors, avoiding accountability one final time. Weeks later, criminal charges for embezzling community funds. Her once pristine reputation crumbled entirely, replaced by public disgrace and well-deserved consequences. The HOA dissolved its board, electing entirely new leadership committed to fairness and transparency. Robert became the new president, immediately implementing policies protecting disabled and minority residents permanently. Marcus used part of his settlement rebuilding his ramp, stronger and more beautiful than before. Neighbors gathered, and crews poured fresh, accessible concrete across his driveway. Tyler watched proudly, finally understanding his father's quiet strength had defeated genuine, real-life villains. Elena hugged Marcus tightly, grateful their nightmare had transformed into hard-fought, well-deserved victory. We did it, she whispered, watching their neighborhood heal from years of hidden suffering. Marcus wheeled smoothly up his new ramp, feeling freedom he hadn't experienced in months. Diane faced foreclosure on her own home, unable to pay mounting legal fees. Her once feared name became a cautionary tale, whispered nervously among other power-hungry HOA leaders. Justice had arrived slowly. But it arrived completely, leaving no room for doubt or denial. Marcus often told Tyler that real courage means standing firm against unfairness. No matter how powerful. Their story spread beyond their neighborhood, inspiring other disabled veterans facing similar discriminatory housing battles. Patricia continued representing victims, citing Marcus's case as a landmark example of accountability prevailing. Sometimes, Marcus looked at his ramp, remembering how close he'd come to giving up. He never regretted fighting. Understanding silence only empowers those who abuse positions of authority. His family finally found peace, proving resilience and truth ultimately triumph over cruelty and corruption. In the end, a judgment. He restored dignity and justice.